Okay, I look the way I look because I'm going to a witch's party afterwards. Yeah, what was the thing? Yeah, okay. We're often sold that the way to improve ourselves is all about stepping out of our comfort zone or voluntarily suffering to achieve a goal. Quitting is not an option. You can take a break, but barely. And optimally, you should be working hard all the time because the harder you work, the better you are.
There's people in here far superior than me. But there's no one in here that's gonna work harder than me. We get up at 5:30 in the morning, it's pissing rain outside. Our competition's sleeping. I love that.
I will not be outworked, period.
Where I excel is ridiculous, sickening work ethic. While the other guy's sleeping, I'm working. While the other guy's eating, I'm working.
Talent you have naturally. Skill is only developed by hours and hours and hours of beating on your craft.
The commodity, the majority of people who aren't achieving the things that they want is strictly based on hustle. It's strictly based on being outworked. It's strictly based on missing crucial opportunities.
Working hard is, of course, good for yourself, but it's also good for your family and your community. It's good for your country.
To sacrifice my own life for Pakistan.
Heck, it's even good for the world that you work your ass off. Or at least that's what we're told. This is the status quo of our society, yet I can't help but notice how many of us are unhappy, unsuccessful, and not particularly good people despite working really hard, and despite trying all the time, and never having a day off. In fact, I think a lot of us are struggling with the polar opposite problem, a fear of being happy and content and not actively achieving goals, being at peace, essentially. And why are we so attracted to suffering? Of course, we can blame capitalism, but we won't. Well, not exactly. I think it's more fair to blame religion for this one. Although, to be fair, it can be really hard to differentiate between what's the influence of religion and what's the influence of some ruling class communicated through religion, but nevertheless. Protestant Calvinism is at the heart of today's grind. It's often referred to as the spirit of capitalism, thanks to the sociologist Max Weber, who coined the term and wrote the book about this. In short, as to not risk boring anyone, Calvinists believed that God was all-powerful and that he had already decided if you were going to hell or not. Now, ordinary people couldn't know what God thinks or have any impact on his decision, but there was a belief that if God wills it, then it must be good. And so when people started becoming anxious regarding their status of eternal condemnation or salvation, they started looking for signs that one might have already been predestined to heaven. And the signs that they looked for was stuff like who had a lot of money, which might be a good indication that you were blessed by God. Calvinists felt a strong sense of duty to work diligently and live disciplined and frugal lives, believing that these actions were indicative of God's favor. Now, this strong work ethic and emphasis on individual responsibility had a profound impact on the economic attitudes of Calvinist societies, particularly in regions of Europe and later in North America. The notion that one's success and prosperity in life could be a sign of God's favor, of course, encouraged the accumulation of wealth, as it was seen as some manifestation of virtuous living. Additionally, the emphasis on worldly success and the idea of a calling further propelled the rise of capitalism. People believed that their professions and economic activities could be viewed as a divine calling, and they were encouraged to excel in whatever work as a means of glorifying God. This perspective again contributed to the growth of a very competitive and innovative and profit-driven economic system. But today, I think it's safe to say that people in Europe and the US are far less driven by some God's promise of sending them to hell or heaven, Yet the cultural values are surviving into a modern day belief system. We still operate on the beliefs that being successful in business is a sign of something inherently good, that having money is good, that working hard is good, and that being lazy is bad, and having less money is bad. Not having a calling or something you feel strongly like doing is really bad, and you need to fix that immediately. And it just struck me as well the other day that if you go through something like the 7 deadly sins, a lot of them really aren't a big deal anymore. Like vanity or pride, hardly a sin today. Greed, not a big deal. Lust, definitely not a biggie. Envy, not good, but could be seen as a motivating agent. Gluttony, less good. People are still really not into fat people, but we're getting there. Then there's wrath. I don't think it's that bad if you're a man, at least. And then there's sloth, which is horrible. Like in our society, there's no excuse for sloth. It's bad for everyone. But all the other sins, I don't think carry the same weight as sloth does. But maybe that's just me. But either way, these ethics are living on through, I think, more modern spiritual practices as well. Now, I've spoken about Stoicism before, and my critique still stands. Stoicism, interpreted for today's reality, is, in my opinion, like capitalist ethics on crack. Stoics already took their beliefs to the extreme, or at least were pretty dramatic about them. And so, when you combine them with capitalist goals, it just becomes even worse, because there is a way to use Stoicism without it needing to be about achieving stuff or becoming rich. But of course, that's not how it's interpreted today. It's interpreted as a self-help productivity hack. It's always used in the context of achieving a goal, and the underlying attitude is one of working hard equals good, especially if that working hard means just denying all your feelings and focusing on what you can affect. Then that's really good.
You can't defeat a man who doesn't care about pain, failure, rejection, loss, disrespect, and heartbreak. He is here to win.
And I think the same can be said for stuff that's like on the polar opposite end of modern like spiritual beliefs, like the law of attraction, which perhaps doesn't immediately seem to be very geared towards a capitalist ethic of working hard. After all, the principles are that trusting the universe is all you need to do, and you should specifically not do anything else. But again, here, I think the ideas themselves are intriguing, and there are lots of ways you could sort of interpret this wisdom and use these principles to achieve stuff like inner peace or calm or, do more good in the world. But that's not how the law of attraction is used in our society either. It's always about getting something, like getting your specific person or getting your dream life or your dream house or a lot of money. Again, achieving a goal is always the point here.
The number one way to manifest money.
Stoicism and the law of attraction are just two examples of how modern belief systems keep reinforcing this idea. The idea that there's salvation to be found in acquiring things and achieving external goals, and that there's inherent value in just working really hard to get them. And this permeates our culture, and so it's not uncommon to think that our parents may very well have embedded these values into you as well. And the hardest part, I think, is that even if you realize that this is the case, when you step outside and you see the endless toiling and the praise of that toiling for what it really is, it's still going to be extremely difficult to change that belief within yourself. Like, I remember when I wanted to embrace taking time off and relaxing and just simply spending a day without doing anything particularly productive. And it was so fucking hard. My parents weren't there at that point to physically shame me for doing nothing or tell me that I should like go work out or something instead, but they didn't have to be, because this belief was fully planted in me. No matter how much I tried, I could not take a day off and do nothing. I mean, physically I could, but instead of this experience being nourishing and replenishing, it was torture. And I felt like I was deteriorating. I felt like a piece of shit the whole way through. And you could experience something like this and conclude that that means that taking time off is bad for you. Because after all, that's what it feels like. A lot of people would probably agree as well, but I don't think that that's the case. Just look at any child or animal, how happy they are to relax, to take naps, or to eat a treat, how they're fully enjoying life without a concern about whether or not what they're currently doing will lead to some monetary gain down the road. A cat doesn't lie around in the sun and then feels guilty about it afterwards. And neither should we. We should stop thinking suffering is so great, that demonstrating hard work makes you a better person than anyone else, and that relaxing makes you lazy or like less than. That relaxing is just a waste of space in between time that's well spent. I just think it's funny how happiness is so unfamiliar to many people, myself included. It's only a reward that you can get once you've like worked your ass off, and most of the time it's something that I feel uncomfortable in regardless. I feel uncomfortable celebrating myself, relaxing, and being complimented. And a lot of the times when we aren't used to things, we feel uncomfortable when it happens, but the only way to change how we feel is to start doing it anyways. And I think doing them while also being aware of how uncomfortable you are and what beliefs are underlying that uncomfortable feelings. Like what beliefs you hold that make you feel uncomfortable. Because if you have a belief that people who lay around and relax are lazy and unproductive and unworthy people, then of course you'll feel guilty when you take a nap during the day. But I'm kind of sick of being a simp for suffering. I don't want to feel guilty anymore out of some dedication to a religion of hard work. Of course, that doesn't mean that I won't put in effort or work hard, but I refuse to do it for that to be the end in itself any longer. Doing it because being stressed or tired feels more familiar and comfortable than anything else. There's nothing noble or praiseworthy about aimless toiling, but there is, I think, something aspirational about how genuinely my cat enjoys laying on his back for hours and truly having the best time, knowing he has never felt any guilt for not paying a bill or being accomplished or pleasing any boss.
There's an old adage that says that money is the root of all evil. Bullshit. Lack of money is the root of all evil.